What's your last name?
Brewer.
Brewer. Okay.
Yes.
We're gonna need these.
Okay. Pass it back. We got two of them. Oh, fantastic. Okay.
They won't be able to hear what you're saying.
Understand.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Whoa, that's loud. How? Why are we all so spread out? So, food will be here shortly. We are having salsaritas today. Thank you all for coming to our appraiser panel. We have, as always, Wells Edie. Everybody knows Wells. And Obie Brewer. So they are here to answer questions. We're not here to talk about specific deals because that's just not going to get us anywhere. And if need be, I'm just going to let them introduce themselves, and then if I need to jump in, then I will. So I'm going to let them take it over, and then we're just going to really open it up to an open forum questions, okay? So, like I said, food will be here shortly, and thanks again for coming.
There you go. I'm Wells Edie from Chattanooga. I know a lot of you guys. Been appraising for 23 years. I've got my SRA designation through the Appraisal Institute. I do FHA, conventional, all the typical residential appraisals, and that's kind of the whole gist of what I've been doing for 23 years.
And I'm Obie Brewer. I work in Don Tyndall's appraisal office. He's been in it for about 40 years. I've been in it for 16, certified residential. He's my father-in-law, so we have a little family business over there. Our office is over in East Brainerd, off East Brainerd Road and Brainerd Road. Obie Brewer. O-B. O-B-Y. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very odd name. I know. Don Tyndall, Donald L. Tyndall, Inc. is my father-in-law. Yeah. Don, and he's been in it for way too long.
Before licensing.
Before licensing, he's been in it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it. I knew that was coming.
So, are you looking specifically for like how we extract our adjustments, or
Yeah, because I mean, like, some of the hardest parts about it, okay, you've got finished basement. I know the last time we talked,
yeah?
depends sometimes on the quality of the basement. Is it drop ceiling, or is it actually sheet rock?
Yep.
And so as a percentage, and that's, I'm just saying, if the top floor is $1,300,
Yeah.
the bottom floor calculated $50.
So the like rule of thumb would be, around 60%. That's just a rule of thumb. That's not the same everywhere. We kind of look at it two different ways. First off, like when we're doing our appraisals, if you're comparing a house that has a basement to one that doesn't have a basement, there's kind of a premium that has to be factored in just for having the basement alone. If you're comparing a house with a basement and some finished area to another one with a basement and finished area, your adjustment may be less. So you kind of have two adjustments in the appraisal report. One for the functionality and then one for the quality of finish and unfinished that's in there. And then we also run regression analysis, and I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they kind of spin out funky, like I guess they call it an algorithm, but it's an equation that will assign different values.
Yep.
And those are all over the place depending on the collinearity of the different features of the thing, depending on how many, of the factors that you plug in are significant versus not. So you may have a negative adjustment for basement in some of those cases. So to answer your question, the best rule of thumb is around 60%, but the best thing you can do as an agent is to find one house that's got a finished basement that's bigger, one house that's got a finished basement that's smaller, and you can kind of tweak your adjustments to find where they kind of balance out. And that's called bracketing, and that's your strongest method to find out what a basement adjustment is. And as you can imagine, if you're doing a house in in the enclave or some $1 million plus neighborhood, the basement adjustment is going to be real different than, you know, one over, you know, in a $200,000-300,000 neighborhood. So,
It could be the same
yeah.
price per square foot. But the way we look at it, opposite of adjustments, the value, when you list a house that has a basement, you're already giving that basement value. We're just agreeing on whether that's right or wrong. So what we do is we just take the math and we deduct the basement and do the price per square foot of the gross living area, which is the first and second floor, and then of all of the finished space combined. And that typically is like what Wells was saying, about 60%. But we're just removing all the math, but we're required to take out the basement and reflect it in a different section of the URAR report, which is Fannie Mae-based report. So we have to separate it out. So we cannot give that basement the same price per square foot. They want us to give it its own price per square foot due to being finished differently than other basements. And most of the time, they're finished to a lower quality. But if they are finished to the exact same quality, you will start seeing that price per square foot for the basement, that value will start increasing. Mm-hmm.
And was told that it was about a $40,000 to $50,000 bump just to have a basement. And so when we had the appraisal done before, right as we were looking at it, and then the appraisal was done for the purchaser who was buying it, the appraiser took costs because they had basements down a little bit further away because they had basements.
Yep.
So isn't that accurate? Because the second one that came in was so much lower. And I'm like, okay, so what is an average, if there is such a thing, just to have a basement versus one basement?
That's kind of what I was talking about with the functionality. If you're comparing a house that has a basement to one that doesn't, you wouldn't do just a square footage adjustment because it wouldn't account for that functionality of having a
Correct,
basement. So that's probably what happened in that appraisal where you said they went a little bit further out to get other houses with basements. They don't have to make that $30,000 or $40,000 adjustment just for having them. They can concentrate solely on the finished and unfinished and quality and condition of it, which is a much lower adjustment. The higher your adjustments and the more you have in a report, the more off the report's going to be. The wider your range typically is going to be, just because you don't account for all the little nuances and little things and negotiation and stuff in appraisals. And so that's why an appraiser a lot of times would rather go, instead of just 1 mile out and use a comparable that doesn't have a basement to one that does, he'd rather go out 1.2 miles to find that one that does have a basement that truly competes for the same potential buyer that you'd be showing.
So is there a rule of thumb for when you have a basement versus one adjustment? Hey, this type of house, there is, $40,000 to a bump?
Just for the utility of having the space of the basement.
Well,
So
that's where you get it. You extract that from the market. So you're looking at sales with basements to see what the market's reaction is to having a full unfinished basement versus the finished space of a basement. So that's when we gather data and comps, and you expand out over a mile to get the sales that have a full basement. That's giving you the data to show you what that price per square foot is for having that basement.
So you guys actually do look at per square foot, because I was told by
Oh,
the
yeah.
appraiser, we don't even look at per square foot. That's what I was told. And I'm
No.
like, okay, am I learning it wrong?
So we look, per square foot is not, it's maybe 30% of the value. Like if you look, you're like, the average square foot price is $278, good. Then our baseline is $278, and then we build upon that.
I think to differentiate, like, a lot of times when you as an agent will go out to price a house, you'll say, hey, it's $200 a square foot. How big is the house? Let's multiply that by $200.
That's not correct.
We don't look at that.
We don't do that.
We do, but we don't. And the reason I say we do is because we actually look at it, but broken out into each individual section. And so we have a separate adjustment for land, a separate adjustment for quality and condition, a separate adjustment for above and below grade. So if you added all of our adjustments up, it may come close to y'all's like $200 a square foot.
Correct,
But in the
yeah.
appraisal report, it doesn't have like a $200 square foot adjustment. It's a completely different square footage adjustment than what y'all are used to using.
That adjustment is not the price per square foot of the sale. That adjustment is what's extracted from the market for the reaction of having a larger versus smaller house within the gross living area.
Can I just interject a little bit on basements. So if you're the only house in your subdivision that has a basement, you can't just say there's 40,000 extra dollars because it has a basement. They have to go out and find comps.
Correct.
That have basements. So, and then they have to have like kind and,
Yeah, you don't just add 40K to the sales price. That's not the way it works. You have to go and see what the market, all the data shows.
When they sell these loans on the secondary market, they get reviewed not only by the lender, but also by the like GSEs, which are like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac and stuff. And they'll look at it and they say, okay, you came up with this adjustment. Where did it come from? Can you prove it on paper, justify it? And
Yeah.
so, you know, even in our report, we say, hey, we had justified this additional adjustment because of comp 2, which didn't have a basement, and we paired it with comp 1, which does, and this is our, you know, adjusted range. And so that's what they're looking for, an explanation as to why. I'd love to just make stuff up.
Yeah, I would too. That'd be great,
Constantly.
yeah.
Well, and I think that goes a lot too. I mean, just like, so we always say, you know, with underwriting, there's two portions. You have your credit portion, you have your appraisal portion, okay? And just like Rob was saying, when you need that documentation, it's just like whether you're looking at the appraisal or the credit portion, like, it's because of 2008 and all the crazy things that people decide to do is why we have to follow certain specific guidelines. Like, we can't just make an exception.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's cash savings, well, let's pretend like it's this from so-and-so, and, you know, you just need the documentation to support it. So that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense.
And a lot of the things that we do, we're just supporting that one feature. So if we need a sale that has a basement, it may be not the most heavily weighted sale, but we have to insert it in our appraisal just to show what the market's doing with that basement. Or any other
Y'all's
feature.
best tools as agents is learning to bracket features.
Yeah.
We don't have like an NADA book that we say, okay, square footage is worth X for this one. I mean, you can imagine if you were trying to value a Honda, you know, 1979 Honda Civic in an NADA guide versus a brand new like Bentley or something, you know, the adjustments for wheels and tires or whatever will be massively different between the two. Well, same with houses at different price points. You know, it's going to be a completely different market in certain areas, and it's going to be a completely different market at different price points. And so the way we extract our adjustments, the best tool we have is bracketing. We'll find one that's bigger, one that's smaller than the subject, and you can imagine like the scales of justice. You know, if you adjust $1 per square foot, they're not going to move a lot. If you adjust $1,000 per square foot, they're going to go out of whack. And so you hone in on your value, messing with $40, $50, $60 a square
Yeah.
foot until you kind of see them line up. And that gives you your best idea of what square footage is adjustment-wise for basement, above and below grade, land. You know, you can use it for just about any of the physical features
And
of
with
the house.
with all of our adjustments, we want it to be under 10% net and gross adjustments. So if it's over 10%, which is what y'all look at, when it goes to underwriting, they look at it and they go, well, this has been adjusted out 27%. That tells them that it's just not a good comparable. But why? And then we have to explain why and how we came up with what we did.
And they're also looking to make sure the house is marketable. They're thinking, hey, if we took this house over and had to sell it as collateral day
Yeah.
one, you know, are we gonna have to do a lot of work? Does it conform to the area? Is it
Yeah.
gonna be as marketable as the other homes in the neighborhood?
Is it
And those
overbuilt,
high
underbuilt?
adjustments are kind of a red flag as to like, maybe it's not, we need an explanation as to why.
So you said that, you like the adjustments to be 10%, is that each adjustment or total?
Total adjustments, yeah. But that's hard. I mean, we do a lot of properties that are very different. And it's not a cookie cutter neighborhood where we have 8 sales that are all the exact same and they're all within 100 square feet of each other. Like a lot of times that's what underwriters will look at. They'll be like, well, we need to bracket everything. We're like, well, we can't put in 37 sales in here. So it's hard for us, but we get the most relevant data that we can find and we can extract adjustments based off of that. And as long as we show what we're doing and how we're doing it, they typically are okay with it.
So are you guys open-minded to taking, using a comp that has closed but doesn't show up in the price yet? Like if we know something's closed, are you guys open-minded if we know it's probably like, hey,
Yeah.
it's closed, we put one right in the comp?
As long as we can verify the sale, that's great. Yeah. But we also love when y'all put data into the MLS. That is what runs the markets. So if you have that sale, even if it says comps only, We love that because we can verify that sale through the realtor. And if it's verified, then that's market
Yeah, I've
value.
had situations where it's been like this sale closed the day before you looked at it, it's just not in public records.
Yeah.
And in those instances, I've usually just been given the number to the title company, and I'll just make a phone call and they'll say, hey, yeah, it closed for X amount on this date.
Yeah.
And that is good enough verification for it. Yep.
Maybe good, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So as far as closed sales, how far back do you guys look? 6 months?
6 months is
Ideal,
ideal.
yep.
A year, you can be, that's kind of industry standard. I did that $16 million house the other day. I was back 2.5 years on some stuff. It depends, but your rule of thumb, especially in a changing market, is 6 months, a year max, in which case you have to adjust for, market conditions.
When you get further out than that, it gets tricky with time adjustments. and you
Especially
gotta-
now, the last
then you
4 or
have to-
5 years.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at 2022, you can't base all of your values off that year. That doesn't work. That's not fair market value now.
Johnny, you got a question?
As far as prices go, are you seeing it flat, are you seeing when you do comparison, are they going down a little or up, or like?
I've seen a total mix of like
Yeah.
some areas in slight decline, flat line, and then slight incline. I haven't seen a lot of areas that are like going through that, 2 year ago boom. I think some of what's driving that slight decline is not necessarily housing prices going down, because what we're looking at is the sales prices. And I think it means there's a lot of inventory coming on the market, and so that's kind of stagnating, prices, and they're being discounted a little bit. So it's in those, a lot of new construction areas where we're
Yeah.
seeing that slight decline, but I think it's kind of a fake decline in value just because of
Yeah,
inventory.
even
levels.
if it shows declining, it's not truly a declining market.
Is the price was set wrong to you? The list price, sometimes the purchase price is set too high.
Yeah.
And so then
Yeah, correct, yeah. Then you see, and then when it closes and it's 30,000 less, then you know why. So they overvalued the price.
Top, you're not seeing the top, a decline. You're saying like different areas possibly a little flat, a little up, but you're not seeing, those are just really.
We're not seeing many sales go over list price anymore. Most of them are under or right at it, but they're not just bumping it up 12,000 to pay closing costs. We don't see that anymore. In 2022, we saw it go up $100,000, and we would come to you and be like, you listed it for 387, how would you think I could find 487? Tell me how we do that. And that's when they started doing the appraisal waiver, so it didn't matter what. We could be at 395, and you're still gonna sell it for 487. They just have to come out of pocket a ton of money. Yeah, but we're not seeing that anymore, so.
Switching gears, can you talk about bedrooms again, because I was here with the last one built in, and look, I know a bedroom had, new house with a bedroom had, and it has.
Bedroom has, it does not, it no longer has to have a closet except for new builds. So new construction, that's, they have to have a closet. But a bedroom now, it just has to have ingress, egress, and a window. What's that, 7 feet for ceiling?
The ceiling
5
height,
foot.
yes, it's 7 feet.
Over 50% of the
It has
room.
to be at 7 feet. That means like if you have a knee wall, you have
Yep.
bonus room and stuff, you stop measuring at 5 feet
Yep.
from the
You
wall
also
down.
have to be able to get out of the window. So
Correct.
it can't be
It-
like a-
There is a minimum
2 foot by
window
2 foot.
size, yeah. So, I have to look up, but
I
it's
think
about
it's-
2 feet by 2
yeah, I
feet.
think it's
There's a minimum
24
height of
by-
like 50
24 inches by 24
We don't
inches.
run into that like a lot, but.
That's mainly in basements, you'll see that.
I think the whole
Most
confusion
windows
with
are
the bedroom closet and stuff is because there's not like a uniform standard across the board. So there's like the building code standards,
Yeah,
which
that's the
says
one, yeah.
nothing about having to have a closet. I mean, think a 1920s house. None of them had closets. They're still bedrooms. And then there's NAR that kind of chimed in and they said, hey, we think it markets better and more like a bedroom if it has a closet. And so they kind of left it to the discretion of the MLSs to decide if they wanted to put that in there as having a closet or not. And so I think there's this, and there's county, permits and stuff. And so there's this big tear between, what we're looking at and how it truly markets versus what the MLS is requiring. And that's where all the headache about bedrooms comes from. But as far as an appraisal, as long as it's permitted, it doesn't have to have a closet. The newer construction, I think, because a closet is expected in the market, it needs to have a,
Yeah.
a bedroom, a closet. But that's just kind of where it is. And what
I think-
G-Car says is different than what the appraiser says.
Yeah.
And I think it's a minimum of 7 feet in any direction, so
Yeah,
49 feet.
the
They can be
ceiling
smaller.
height has to be 7 feet over 50% of the room. So if you have a knee wall at 3 feet, we have to come out 2 feet to 5 feet to get that.
I
That's
put
the-
together
That's the lowest
an
amount.
article that I wrote about bedrooms and addressing all that stuff. I'll send it to Mary and have her send it out to you guys. But it's about a 3-page like breakdown of the history of bedrooms and stuff.
But even if it's not considered a bedroom, you still have that space in the gross living area. So if it's an office, it's still reflected in the gross living area, and you're getting value for it, whether it's a bedroom or not.
Just like we've talked about in my house.
Yeah.
Wells has praised my house, I think, 3 times now.
Yep.
Um,
Still haven't been invited to your pool, but okay.
any,
Well, you can be my girl.
anytime. But I have a downstairs room that's probably better use as an office. But because I had older parents, I made that my guest bedroom because I had a full bathroom downstairs. And I used an upstairs bedroom as an office. Still, my house is a 4-bedroom house with a study or whatever
Right,
it is.
yeah.
It's not marketed as a 5-bedroom house. I guess it could be, but that's not the highest and best use of that room.
Yeah, and then, like, more importantly, if you're bringing in a family to look at your house that was a 4 with an office versus one that's a true 5, would they look at it any different? I would probably say not. They'd look at it and say, hey, we need to stick little Billy in this room or whatever. We'll throw in a closet or get him a dresser or something that would market the exact same way. The only time that we see a difference in value based on bedrooms is like 1 versus 2
Yeah,
or
exactly.
2 versus 3. But once you start getting into normal marketability, it loses that punch.
If it affects the functionality of the house, then it's a problem. But like a 1 versus 2 bedroom.
When you guys look at improved property, whether somebody was finished off with a nice basement, or they added on a bedroom, closed in a garage, and finished that into a room, do you look at whether or not construction is permitted?
Well, we're supposed to.
We're supposed to.
Yeah.
You're supposed to.
It's supposed to have a permit because you can imagine what a lender would think if they got a property, financed it, and then they said, hey, this is unpermitted, we're gonna make you rip off this back addition. They'd be,
It's not built to code.
yeah.
Yeah,
You can bring that back.
but sometimes we can't pull the permits, so a lot of times you can't find them, and we're not gonna go out of our way to get them. And we've run into a problem where there was they did a renovation, but it was a different family. I did an appraisal 4 years ago, and they did a full renovation on the side of the house, but it was a different family that did the renovation, and I was appraising it for this new family. And they came to me and they were like, this wasn't permitted, you can't include the entire house. And I go, well, I didn't appraise it back then, so I only know what's in front of my eyes. And
And
if it's not permitted, you need to provide it to me. Show me that it's not permitted. Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
in every appraisal report, there's hypothetical conditions and
Yeah.
extraordinary assumptions. You know, we assume that the house isn't built on an active volcano or in a
Yeah.
sinkhole and stuff like that. It's called latent and subsurface defects, and then things that, you know, we don't go out and check every permit for the house and every
Yeah,
time it's
that
been
would- we
approved and
wouldn't get
stuff. We have
anything
to-
done if we-
We have to assume, you know, unless it looks off, it's gonna be on. We do check for permits on some new construction and new additions and stuff like that. But typically, when we go out there, they're gonna have the county tags on everything, and so it's kind of a non-issue.
Real quick, just to let y'all know, there is food out there if anybody's hungry now, or we can eat after, just letting y'all know real quick.
Well, they've relaxed on the name of the bedroom if it does not have a closet, because a lot of Chattanooga's older homes built before 1940s. So like in San Elmo, it's normal not to have a closet. They would use an armoire. So what our entire argument was, well, is it a 0-bedroom house? That makes no sense. It's 3 bedrooms. Why does it have to have a closet type thing? But now it's just the market stand, it's just accepted that it needs to have a closet. So if I like this one. If it's perked, I don't know anything about septic systems. If it's perked for 3 bedrooms versus 4 bedrooms, I need to be made aware of that. But if they have data to give me that shows that it's perked for 3 bedrooms, then I will adjust my appraisal. But I don't like pull the septic perked numbers, and I don't have access to that, nor am I a plumber that would be able to provide that. Yeah, but if you have it up front and give it to me, then I will show it as a 3-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't.
You know, worst case scenario is it again boils back down to how the house would function.
Yeah.
And it's like when you go to market it, does it matter if you call it a 3-bedroom house if it's got that extra room versus one that is a true 3? No, probably not. You know, like I said, you know, any parent that's coming out to look at it and that needs to stick a kid down there is going to do it whether the septic is permitted for it or not.
Right.
And there's a lot of houses out there. We could prove that in the market. So it would be a non-issue for me. I would, in the appraisal report, just say exactly what I said. I'd say, hey, this functions as a 4-bedroom house. I've compared it to 4-bedroom houses because that's how the typical buyer would see it.
Correct,
The septic permit says 3. I'm calling it a 3 with an office, but there's no adjustment because of how it
Yeah.
functions. So.
Yeah, that or I would probably say there's no impact on marketability.
Yeah, and that's
Correct.
That's
yeah.
what I hate about the MLS making you put certain things in that. And like, I had a guy in that was a state reviewer one time to teach an education class, and you know, he said it pretty well because there's all these gray areas in listings and all these gray areas in appraising, and it's kind of like, am I going to get my license taken away over a closet? Like, this is crazy. He said, narrative is your best thing. Y'all have the agent remarks, and we have an entire addenda in our appraisal report, and if there's anything that's not like crystal clear, just spell it out. And
Yeah.
I would recommend you do the same thing. It doesn't help the room count and stuff, I know, in the searches, but you know, in the remarks section, just say, hey, here's the situation right here, and I don't think you're ever gonna get in any type of trouble or anything like that.
If you read into our appraisals, we protect ourselves a lot in the back of the report. If you start reading it, you'll see all of this, yeah, verbiage.
Maybe talk about bumped out attics versus 2-story houses.
Bumped out attics like bonus rooms?
Or you have an older house in St. Elmo,
Yeah.
and you take an attic and you turn it into living space.
Yeah, so it counts as living space provided it's finished to the same quality as the rest of the house. Again, it all boils back to not what the appraiser thinks, but what the market thinks, what the typical buyer would view it as. When you measure the above grade living space, it has to have a minimum ceiling height of 7 feet. You measure to 5 feet on the knee walls and down. That's where you measure across. And so it's not that full space that you'll see, but it's the usable space where somebody could walk and live. It has to be a contiguous space. In the situation you see sometimes, I did a house just the other day off of Mountain Creek Road, I think, and you had to go through the garage, unconditioned space, to get to the bonus room above the garage, which was conditioned space. And so we could not include it in the square footage of the property, but in the appraisal, we made a line item adjustment for it, and we said, hey, here's what it would have been impacted if it was included. It markets the same way, we just can't include it because of our measuring standards. It still got value, just not in it wasn't included in the gross living area, similar to breaking out a basement. We just created a line item adjustment for it.
Also has to be heated and cooled.
Yep.
So when you say heated, and if somebody has like an independent unit, it's just not going to be HVAC, so
That's fine, yeah. A lot of bonus rooms, you see the mini splits that are on the wall, that suffices for our market. As long as it's accepted within the market and it's a permanent fixture, then you're good. Even a window AC unit would work.
This could be a second garage attached, or it could just be a shed. A lot of times I'll go to a house and say, oh, look at my shed, I got electricity and stuff out there.
bracketing technique, what I was saying, we try and find one without it, one with a similar shed, and see if it contributes and is well accepted in the market. On those sheds, a lot of times you have to be kind of careful if they're not permanently affixed to the ground. It's just one of those ones where you can take a rollback and, you know, drop it in place to take it. Those are typically considered personal property. If it's an FHA appraisal, even if it's personal property, we have to inspect the interior and exterior, and it has to meet FHA standards, even though it's just a shed. But, I mean, they typically add marketability is what I see in curb appeal. Unless it's one of those giant like barns, I don't see like a huge increase on value. Most of those sheds you can buy for, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and it's a nice thing to have. And then also when we're extracting our data from the MLS, you know, a lot of people say like, how much do you adjust for a deck or something like that? And it's kind of, it's almost impossible to truly adjust for a deck without accounting for it just in the marketability and overall appeal of the home, because think you could have a 10-foot by 10-foot deck, a 3-foot by 3-foot, a 50-foot by 50-foot deck. The MLS doesn't give the deck sizes and stuff like that, nor does it give the quality and condition of it, nor does it give the materials of it. And so to truly extract what the market reaction would be to something like that, it would need to be even across the board, and the data's just not there to do
Yeah.
it.
And if the data's not there, we just put 0 and don't adjust for it.
But someone says I spent $30,000 on it, it's knocked out, this was awesome. What I'm, I just got back and I just look at the homes that the homes that have.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
if you
and-
find one that does, you can use that as a basis for your adjustment. You say this one does, this one doesn't. There's a $30,000 difference.
That area, if I can go outside of the area, this is one,
Yeah.
this is one out, this is one, and you value that, and then
But a lot of times it could cost them $50,000, but the return
You
could
may
be
not get a
less
dollar
than
for
$5.
dollar, but
Yeah.
what you're talking about is going to a nearby similar competing market. I do that all the time. I'll
All the
put two
time.
sales in my appraisal report in the addenda and say, I use 123 Smith Street and 125 Smith Street in a completely different market. It's competing, but I got my deck adjustment from these two sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No location adjustment warranted. But the farther out you go, and once you get into different markets, the problem is you're opening up more problems of, is the location better? Is it in a neighborhood versus not a neighborhood? What's the market's reaction to all of that? So if you're more in the market area that you're working in, you would like to stay in there, if you could. But a lot of times you can't. Chattanooga's different. It's hard to necessarily stay in one market.
speaking of that, I don't think you
Yeah.
No, you're good.
when I go to CNA, a lot of times if I can't find similar houses right around it, I try to stay in the same school district because I really want.
But the way I look at it is, we have to go find the data somewhere. So we start in a certain, Wells and I will do the exact same thing. We start in a bubble, and if I can't find it, we start expanding. And then we expand and expand until we get the data. And if we have that data and we think it's sufficient enough to put in our report, we'll use it. So the only way to do that is you start going back in time, or you go farther out in distance. And a lot of times you have to go real far in distance to get stuff.
School districts are a great like guide. I mean, like a lot of people look at that, but really the question you ask yourself in those situations is, if I was showing this house I'm about to list to somebody, what other houses and other areas would I show? And then say, there's nothing that meets their criteria here.
Yeah.
What other competing markets would I possibly go to? And that's where you're gonna find your best comparable properties. And a lot of times, you're right, that is driven by school district. I mean, that's a huge factor for a lot of people. Maybe not so much in like the 55-plus communities, but, you know, and all the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also some people that look at it and they don't really care about the school district too, so they can come in and it won't affect them.
Carol, did you have a question?
I know when you were here before, we talked about brokers concessions or
Yeah.
buyers concessions. Have you seen any impact? with
I've seen none whatsoever. I've been watching it pretty closely. The only thing I've noticed personally is that a lot of the commissions have dropped to about 2.5%, maybe from
Yep.
3, just a hair. But, you know, each market is different. Sometimes it's more negotiable, but across the board here, it seems to be 2.5%, 3% still. Not much has changed, kind of like I thought. And so that requires no adjustment. Same with
Yeah.
closing costs. As long as it's within that normal range, you don't adjust for it, because that accounts for just about all the houses. If we go in, we have a closing costs on a $400,000 house of like $25,000, we'll make an adjustment. If I see an agent commission that's like 9% or something, I'd make an adjustment. But barring that, there's no adjustment that needs to be made for it.
Yeah. As long as it's reflected in the market too, so. But what you can't do, I saw one time, not from Keller Williams, a realtor just tacked on to the value. They just tacked on 5% for their commission to the overall sales price. That's what you cannot do, because that you have to go and find that value. If that value's not there, we're going to slash it and be like, you got to take out, your commission is not built into the market. That doesn't work that way. It still has to stay within. Yeah, yeah. So if you have an above ground pool, that's a lot different than below ground. So once you start looking, then you look at the quality of the pool. Is it gunite versus vinyl lining? And then is it accepted in the market the same as what Wells was saying? You have to go bracket it. So you find a sale that has a pool that is hopefully similar in size, quality, design, landscaping, all that kind of stuff. And it does, it can, but also I could put in a 150,000 pool and it could return $20,000. So cost doesn't equal value all the time.
But it was cool to watch during COVID, like, I'd say the pools didn't really add that much. I mean, maybe, and the cost
Yeah.
also went up, but like, after COVID, it was like the houses with pools, you could see they were selling for like $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 more.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge jump, and it's backed off of that a little
Yeah,
bit,
it
but
has.
it still increased it significantly. I mean, everything increased significantly, but it was interesting to kind of watch that shift.
One side you have houses being advertised saying, hey, it has a pool and it's
Yeah.
all water and all that, and then when you go to inspection, then they're not actually considered in the general inspection, you need to have somebody separate.
Oh, yeah.
It's an additional cost for the client.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so this does have more value, possibly a liability if it's not fenced up, and a lot of other additional, features that aren't very attractive.
Pools are great. They're fun. I wish I had one. Mary won't invite me to hers still, but like, you're usually not going to get a dollar for dollar return on that investment.
Yeah.
You know, maybe
That's
if
almost
you're
100%,
super high
yeah.
end, but I mean, yeah, and maintenance and stuff.
And
I
the-
mean, they're a headache, but they're awesome to have.
The above ground pools are even worse. There's a lot of times I give zero values to those. Just
And
because it
most
doesn't help.
lenders will look at them as personal property
Yeah.
anyway. I've done a lot of foreclosures where they took the pool, and so lenders typically don't want to, loan on something that they can just strip away pretty easily.
Yeah.
I've got another question about tax assessments. They just went crazy with tax assessments. And in the past, we didn't really look at that, other than we just were kind of like, what is that assessed for?
Yep.
Kind of, it was kind of like, okay, let's just check this out. But now, they're coming in like way more than.
It's unbelievable, yeah. We're getting a lot of business from it, too.
What's the script that we share, not the bank,
So we've been getting a lot of individual appraisals because of this, because their taxes have gone up. Their assessment has gone up 60 to 70%. And I don't know where they're getting this data, but it seems like they're more in line with the actual property itself. Like they're understanding more the land value and then the structure value too. And they're getting the square footage more accurate, which I don't know where they're getting it. If the tax assessor called my office and said, I want to know everything about this house, I would tell them to kick rocks. We can't give that to them. We're not allowed to share that data. But I don't know how they're getting this accurate information.
Well, mine's inaccurate.
Yeah.
Mine's overstated by 600.
Yeah, So I can't figure out how they're getting, like the square footage is getting more in line, which doesn't make sense. But you can dispute it too. So if you get an appraisal from Wells or I, and you take it, you can dispute that value and be like, you have it taxed at this amount. Here's the appraisal that shows that it's 80,000 less. And they'll typically drop it down, especially with our appraisal.
Or get it measured if it's a significant difference in size, and I just go to them and say, y'all need to recalculate this, and I'll take the money for however long I've lived there from the miscalculation. Usually it's measured by a person. I griped at them forever because they were including like porches and everything else in it, so they've broken it apart a
Garages.
little bit. But I did one on, I can't remember where it was the other day. I'm not gonna say where it was, but they were about 600 square feet off. The guy went back to the assessor and got some cash, but I was looking at what they did, and they just cut the garage like straight across, and it had a bunch of like little places where it went in the house. They added 12 feet to the side of one of them, and it overplayed the guy's value, and it kind of messed up his sale because the house was under contract, and when we came out, we're like, hey, this is like 400 square feet smaller, 500 square feet smaller, and so.
I
it
think
did create an
they're gonna have to redo them because it's ticked a lot of people off and it's way off, yeah. I don't-
Now, we're talking to people listing appointments, and they're seeing this new number, like, well, my house should be worth.
Yeah, you're like, no, it's not that, yeah.
Do you think the tax assessor's coming in higher than the actual value?
Oh, yeah, way off.
Really?
I haven't seen, yeah,
uh, yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd absolutely.
Well,
get an
that would
appraisal
work
and-
for you to get an appraisal and
look
show
at
them,
it.
like, it's worth
They use
6,
these
7.
things like the tax assessor has to give up his appraiser license if he has one. They use something that's called a mass appraisal module, and it's basically like a regression analysis, and it just kind of brings in data from one area that they have, which oftentimes is inaccurate, and then they just apply a formula to the few things that they know about your property, which is year built, size, garage, and area, and then that spits out a number. And so it's like playing darts. It's like sometimes it's gonna be spot on, sometimes it's gonna be higher, sometimes it's gonna be lower. It should be close, but it sounds like in your situation, it was overstated massively because of an inaccuracy in the gross living
Yeah.
area, which if you can see the square footage is different, I'd fight it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I would find it,
Yeah.
yeah. You can even just show them a sketch,
Yeah, my mom is like all throughout the neighborhood, that same house is everywhere.
yeah.
So if they got, they should have like limits, should be easy.
Are all the other ones like that?
I pulled a few other people, they're lower.
Is
Interesting.
their square footage right?
Yours is right, yours is 37.
Is yours too high?
Mine's showing 44.
Yeah. I'd go
Okay,
back to it.
yeah, I would just send them a sketch of the house, and they will change it.
Yeah, use it.
I'm doing an appraisal for an individual now where his tax assessment went up 168%.
Mine went up 200
168,
something.
yeah. And he was like, that's not right, that's not accurate. And I will do an appraisal and he's gonna go present it to him, and I don't know if they'll change it or not, but they typically will, if it's incorrect.
I'm actually worried that they've got my value just right.
I know.
Yeah.
So,
That's, I can't
just,
figure out how to do it.
disappointed, but
Yeah.
That's where I am with mine. That mine over 200% higher, but it was a family sale at first, so.
I
Not
think
gonna argue.
it's gonna be from property to property.
Right, that's right.
And what if the house has a special feature like log cabin? You only look at log cabin, I know that you go apart.
GSEs require at least 2 log cabins in the report. Again, they get back to marketability. If we take this thing over and we need to sell it, are log cabins marketable? We want to see proof of a couple other sales that are similar, even if you have to expand your distance parameter. And then you can use other houses that it competes with. If it's another house that's not a true log style house, you can compare it to a regular stick built with regular siding and stuff. And then there's also a big differentiation between like true log homes and then the ones that kind of have that facade and stuff.
Yeah.
The true log homes are the ones you really have to have true log home sales to
Yeah,
compare.
that's when
against.
you're looking at the quality of the log home, yeah. So you want to compare it to another quality log home somewhere else, and that may be 20, 40 miles away. But if that's your data, that's your data. You have to go and find that,
They market different.
yeah.
Anybody have questions on manufactured homes?
Can you remind me what was the, you know, if I ever miss a contact, find out each stuff and so on,
That one I'm gonna have to.
Yeah,
That one's,
Yeah,
I think that's a 1976. That's when they started issuing the HUD tags and stuff for them. Before that, they're known as trailers, and then they are manufactured homes
Manufactured
after
homes.
that. Mm,
That's
they're-
something she would have to look, yeah.
Maybe. I know there's different types of, what was it, like, is it home path financing or something that? they
Yeah,
have
that-
with
that's who
manufactured
issues
Ones,
it.
and like USDA has a lot stricter requirements.
homes? Yeah. They'll go.
You'll go FHA.
USDA usually only wants new ones.
the brand new ones are super nice too. They're very expensive. So you're getting to a point where if it's the same quality as a stick-built home, you can compare it to a stick-built home. But you would need a manufactured home to at least have the data.
Part of the issue on that a lot of times is they even pre-printed on the appraisal form that you can't have something called a land-home combination, where they won't let you, and this applies to manufactured home purchases and also new construction where you buy the land and have whoever builder come and build your house. You can't just say the land's $100,000, the house was $200 to build, it's a $300,000 sale. That's not allowed because you could theoretically ruin the value of the property or do something crazy by placing the house wrong or putting the wrong structure on there. And so those are excluded. And so a lot of times we do run into that issue doing the new construction, manufactured homes and new construction, where we have to find sales that are 1 and 2 years old, obviously don't sell for as much, and we have to make that argument in the appraisal report. But that's just a lender, not a lender, a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac restriction
Yeah.
they've imposed.
Not a married.
Not a married. Mary didn't make that rule.
Yes, well, I mean, Wells and I had one that just, I mean, you know, this was almost a $2 million home. And getting it comped out because that's what everything else was gonna be being built is custom home being built on the land, not,
Yeah.
you know, a spec home or a builder just building houses. And, yeah, we ran into lots of trouble on getting that land sold in the secondary market.
Yeah, and part of it was some of the info was listed as a sale in the MLS, but back to what she was saying, when we verify the sales, we went in and we started seeing that it was a land home purchase combination, and so that's why we had to exclude the sales from the appraisal report. But we discussed them and said this is how much they're building them for, so it conforms to the area, and ultimately, I think everything worked out fine.
That sounds like a pain.
It's done, but it was, you know, one of those ones that, just know when you're talking about that kind of custom build, it can run into different troubles, especially
Right.
when you're talking jumbo investors versus Fannie and Freddie.
Not a lot of spec $2 million homes out there to compare it to.
Back to, home improvements, are you familiar, aside from us just pulling comps, which is hard to do for recent, upgrades to homes, you know, new cabinets, new kitchen countertops, new hardwood floor, new garage doors, et cetera, are you familiar with any kind of a source that we might go to pull, you know, what the percentage of return on investment is for, like, on those investments we made recently, within 3 years?
So, kind of a two-part answer to that. There's something that's like called the cost approach. We typically do it in new construction up to about 5, where we estimate the cost of the home new. There's a lot of services out there. Marshall and Swift is one. I use one that's called buildingcost.net, and it allows you to enter the features of the home and kind of gives you a construction cost for it. As far as extracting it from the market, it goes back to what I was saying. You know, we can't go into the MLS and say, what houses have been updated with new cabinetry, and it spits out like a bunch of sales. That data is just not there. And so we have to go in and visually look at the houses and say, this one was a flip, like somebody bought it in this condition, they did this to it. How does that compare to what's been done with the subject? Okay, now we have that information. How much do we estimate that this renovation project cost, and how much return did they see on that? And so that's where we get those numbers from, and we'll say, hey, they got a 25% return, so up until a certain point, it adds, you know, 1.25% return, which is the entrepreneurial incentive for doing an update on a house typically. Does that make sense what I said? Okay, so we're basically measuring how much an investor expects to receive in return for doing a renovation project. And so if we see that it's 25%, and we see that your new cabinets and all that stuff are in line with kind of what they're seeing, we can expect to say, hey, this guy's gonna receive not only the cost of his improvements back, but an additional sweat equity, entrepreneurial incentive of 25%, because that's what all these other ones are receiving. That's a good one to get your costs of it, but to see the return, try and see what a pre-flip and a post-flip sold for, and then estimate maybe using building cost.
This situation, I've got a seller that I'm trying to determine the value of their upgrades. They just bought the house 3 years ago in the
Yeah.
middle of the pandemic, overpaid 15,000 over list.
Mhm.
Then they went in and made a bunch of improvements.
Yeah.
$60,000 in improvements.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to.
So you may not get that return because the market has
You see diminishing
Yeah,
returns.
diminishing
Typically, you want to
returns.
go to the median, and it's a big bell curve. And so you start seeing a dollar for dollar return,
Mhm.
then it flattens out, and then you start getting less of a dollar for dollar return. You know, I told you I just did that $16 million house. They're not going to put in, you know, another million into it and get it out probably. It's already kind of maxed out for the area. They've exceeded the median value and the median for half the country.
What's the best way to estimate your services if I'm trying to, you know, do a net sheet for somebody? And, you know, I've heard that you price your appraisals based on square footage. Is there a dollar amount per square footage or?
Like for the cost of an appraisal?
Yeah.
That's typically a flat
Yeah.
flat E. It goes in brackets like houses up to 700,000, then 700 to, you know, 1.2 million.
or size of the land.
And
There's a lot.
The way we price them is we look and say, hey, a normal appraisal we charge less for realtors, but $550. If this one has acreage and is going to take, you know, 20% longer, we'll typically tack on about 20%. It's based on our time. We do it on what we think the hourly rate would be for completing it. Yeah. Yeah.
And it also is based off of our volume. So if we're loaded up for the next 2 weeks, it may take us longer to get to it. And if you need it within a week, then we can rush it for you. But that rush is jumping a lot of other clients that we have too. Correct. And so we can go up from there.
Appraisals in general are just taking longer now because they're wanting so much more
Yeah.
out of it, and there's all this new technology. I'd say ours are 20 to 30% slower than they were this time last year, just because we're having to a lot of it's our learning curve and stuff, having to, you know, run all the regression and the new stuff and kind of see how it works and tweak the formulas and double check them. But it's they'll be getting faster and faster. But
It's
the
also-
GSEs keep adding, you know, new stuff.
It's also, the underwriters have a lot less appraisals to look at too, so.
They got
So
more
they're
time on their
reviewing them hard. So we're making changes. That's what y'all don't see is they get kicked back to our office for weeks. And you may have already closed on it, it still comes back. Because they gotta figure out a way to sell it on the secondary market. We're not throwing lenders under the bus. We're throwing the underwriters. Most of them are good though.
What else do people have? This is a good time to ask questions while we've got their undivided attention.
Everybody's thinking about food.
They are.
FHA.
We don't, VA is its own panel. Yeah, we do FHA.
And I tried to have a VA appraiser come, and I just did not find one that was available
Yeah.
for this panel.
VA is really tough to get on, that panel.
They don't open it up. It's not tough
Yeah.
to get on.
Yeah, they just don't
haven't
open it up.
Opened it up in years and years and years for anybody. There's actually a list you can go on. It's done by counties. There's some backdoor ways to get into it, but you know, it might be 10 years before they open Hamilton County, and they'll
Yeah.
keep 2 people doing VA appraisals or 3 people doing VA appraisals.
It's the guidelines to them. Yeah.
Ball field. I was gonna say, they're a whole different ball field.
Yeah.
Like, not only for appraisers, but like an underwriter we have, she had to go through 8 appraisal scenarios and then get those signed off on by an already, certified underwriter for VA. And then she could be approved to underwrite appraisals, but then she had to credit underwrite for a whole year with getting signed off behind another underwriter that was already certified to underwrite before she could be certified as a VA underwriter going on her own.
But
Like credit
I
and
think your
appraisal.
question was, why are they a little bit more strict, right? And it's to protect the veteran. That is their main goal in the minimum property standards that they set. I really don't find that they are that much more difficult. I think they've got a bad rap. Because there is the one story that goes around about, well, they blew this one up because there wasn't a closet in a bedroom, or and those stories just get passed from place to place. I've been doing VA loans for over 30 years. I was in primarily VA markets before I moved to Chattanooga. They just, their main goal is to protect the veteran. So they do look at the property standards just a little stricter, but not really much stricter than FHA does. And FHA is really not that much stricter than conventional.
Yeah.
Everything goes back to safety and soundness conditions. And, you know, other than the pesky peeling paint for FHA, I mean, they're not that much different. Unless you got a crawl space, you know, it's 8 feet. Yes.
Yeah. FHA, there's a lot of gray area in FHA because it's nationally, it's a nationwide. So like in Arizona, they have different houses than we do in the South. So. FHA wise, they all have to be open. They all have to open and close.
She's asking about windows and FHA rules on windows.
For FHA,
But for,
Yeah, for the bedrooms, you gotta have adequate ingress and egress, so you need to have at least one that opens, but I would bet you'll get a lot of appraisers out there that don't wanna kind of fight the red tape and will call for all of the windows to be open. But FHA says we only have to test a representative sample of outlets, windows, you know, faucets, all that stuff. And so I'm not gonna go through and ever test them. I'm gonna make sure the one in the bedroom opens and then make an assumption that all the rest work, provided the safety element is there, being able to escape in the event of a fire.
yeah, we're not gonna walk around testing every
The
single.
windows have to be in decent condition. You can't have broken glass.
Chip
You
paint.
that would be a safety hazard. If you have a thermal pane that's got a crack in it or something, not a big deal. Yeah, yeah.
Conventional is just health and safety. So if it affects the health and safety and soundness of the house, then we can,
be able to get out of the bedroom.
you still have to be able to have ingress, egress out of a bedroom if there was a fire. Yep.
FHA, if they have bars on the window, it has to be able to be open with
It
a
has to be a
key
latch,
or something,
yeah.
or a latch that doesn't require a special type of key or tool. Yeah.
It's pretty much, you just have to be able to get out of it if you can. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions?
I hope that was helpful.
I mean, one, I just really thank you guys for coming and spending this time with us, answering these questions. I know that, they are usually available for questions on things. I know that they will, I mean, usually if you leave good comp information, like in a listing, they'll look at it. It may
Definitely.
not.
I love that, yeah.
They, you know, may not be usable, but they're gonna at least look at it and take it into consideration. So, you know, any valid information that you can give, they will listen to. That, you cannot do it. That's a no-go.
That's a $50,000 adjustment. Well, thank you so much for having us, Mary. Thank you for having us. I appreciate that.
Please get some
Yep.
food. Yes, please get food, eat the food.
I'll leave my cell phone with Mary, so if you have any questions, you feel free to call or text.
Thank you.
Thank you.